This week on Writers Inc.
I've been guilty of doing that too, and you have to trust your audience. Like, I mean, I had my my screenwriting manager come back to me about a script I wrote a while back, and she said, like, oh, it's great, but this one scene, it's too on the nose. Like, let the audience figure it out. So I reworked the scene with that in mind, and sure enough, I feel like it flows a lot better. You have to trust that your audience will figure it out.
J.K. Rowling was nearly homeless when she wrote the first Harry Potter book. Stephen King penned Carrie on a small desk wedged between a washer and dryer. James Patterson worked in advertising and famously crafted the Toys R Us theme song long before becoming an author. Join New York Times bestseller J.D. Barker and a panel of industry powerhouses as they pull back the curtain on some of the world's most prolific authors. Where did they start? What is their process? The biggest names in publishing all have origin stories, all have tips and secrets. What does it take to consistently top the bestseller lists and become a household name? Get your notepad out. School's in session. This is Writers Inc.
Hi, this is Jena Brown.
This is Kevin Tumlinson.
And this is JD Barker. Welcome to Writers Inc. We are having technical difficulties. So Christine works at a school during the daytime, and she usually logs in to do the podcast, and she's having some kind of issue where we see her pop up on the feed, but we can't actually hear her. Like, we see her computer connect, but we can't physically see her or hear her. So hopefully she's going to chime in at some point during this episode. If not, we'll catch up with her again next week. I started the day on a very sad note. So I logged in, I was working on my book. I opened up Grammarly. Like, every time I write a chapter, I take it and I drop it into Grammarly just to kind of run through it and look for, real basic grammar type goofs, like if I repeated the word the, like the, stuff like that, quick typos. Grammarly is real good at catching that kind of thing. So I opened it up, dropped the text in there, and a little message box came up that said the Grammarly desktop is going to be going away. And it said I had 17 days until it's gone forever. Would I like to log into the web interface instead? Which just makes me sad, because I like, that's been part of my writing process from the get-go.
Yeah. Did they say why it's going away, or they just...
No, and it's like
they don't want to support the app anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real light function app. Like, there's a way to build apps for computers that rely heavily on the backdrop of Chrome, Google Chrome. So basically uses the computing power of Chrome, and it's almost like an app that runs more or less online, but through Chrome, but it looks like a resident app on your computer, like it's a local piece of software. And that's what they've been doing. And as far as I know, that's, a fairly simple thing to keep up, but yeah, it's going away. So I'm going to reach out to them after this to try and figure out why it's going away, see if there's any way to keep it. But that kind of sparked a question. Like, do you guys do anything like that? Like, as you're writing, do you check grammar, punctuation? Like, do you use any of those tools while you're doing the book, or do you do that after the fact?
I use Pro Writing Aid, and I like those guys. I'm friends with those guys, so that's part of it. I used to use Grammarly, though. I used to actually use both, and what I had was a whole, like, what I call my edit stack, and I would run things through, like, words, grammar and spelling check, and then Grammarly, and then Pro Writing Aid, etc. But now I just do Pro Writing Aid because it can work with the Scrivener files natively.
Oh, I didn't know that. It depends. Sometimes I will, and sometimes I won't. I've been doing a different thing with this manuscript where I'm actually writing each chapter in its own document. So I guess sort of like Scrivener, but I don't know why I'm not just using Scrivener. I have Scrivener, but this is how it started. So I don't know. This is how it's going.
What do you do at the end when you do that? Like, how do you compile all of it together? Do you actually, like, physically copy and paste, or?
So I think, I guess I'll just speak. So what I do is when I finish a chapter, I have like a document that's like the draft, and then I just copy it into the draft. So I'll kind of work on the chapter and then do some light editing, read through it, see if I like it. And then because I'm working off an outline, I have like the Post-its of like, this is the beat I want to have. And so I double check that that's all there, and then I'll put that in the main document.
Do you have Scrivener?
I do.
I have an idea for you. And maybe this will help. No, you don't. I mean, Scrivener is we actually talk about this in the interview, by the way, Scrivener, but you can import multiple Word documents into Scrivener, and then they just become chapters in the app. And so if you want an easy way to compile it all together, just drag and drop all of them into Scrivener when you're ready.
That's interesting. Yeah, I might have to play around with that a little bit. I've used Scrivener before, and I think when I first started, so it was with one of my earlier manuscripts, and I think it was just kind of overwhelming for me, and so I transitioned back to Word. I honestly don't know why this draft ended up being so so all over the place, but I mean it's working and I'm getting words down, so I'm just riding the wave.
That's all that matters, right?
Yeah. One of my irritations with Word on Mac, if you're on a PC, you can use the Word's table of contents feature as sort of, it'll show you like all your chapter headings. You can functionally, that thing works exactly like Scrivener. You can grab a chapter and move it and it'll reorder it for you and everything. But the Mac version doesn't do that.
Interesting. I've always been on Mac, so I actually had no idea what I was missing out on. So thank you for that, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
If there's a way to hack writing, I have tried it. So if you got any questions, I'm always looking at like new ways to do it. I always fall back to Scrivener. That's my comfort zone now. But I'm obsessed with all writing tools. Like I have to actively lock myself out of buying a free write because I've got just zero use for the thing. But they're awesome. But I would want to own like every version of the thing because it's just beautiful. So
free write. I'll have to pick one of those up. I've been meaning to try one of those too, just to see what that's like.
I did a review of one early days, and it's fun. I will say that because it's very clacky, and that little e-ink screen that's on it. It's if you want focused writing. But my writing process is very like I can focus, no problem. I have no problem with focusing. But if I need a quick bit of research, man, I pop over to Google, and I suppose I could just do that, have my phone or whatever, and do that. But I don't know. My workflow is very tied in with Scrivener on the MacBook.
All right. What do we have in the news?
Well, let's start with upcoming changes to Kindle Vella tokens. This week, Amazon announced changes to how authors are paid for Kindle Vella. Instead of 3 episodes free, readers will now receive 10 episodes free. Free episodes will continue to be considered as a factor for bonuses. The 200 free tokens for new readers will also end. All paid episodes will require 10 tokens to unlock versus 6 to 50 tokens they were previously based on word count. Authors will continue to earn 50% of what readers spend. And I've seen a lot of people very angry about this.
This sounds a lot like the death of Vella, right? Like a fire sale right before they closed that door.
Yeah. And I don't use Vella. I never did get on that wagon. I don't know if you guys have used it.
Well, you know who uses it? Christine. Who was not able.
She would be perfect to talk about this, but she's just a blank screen.
Yeah, she has tried desperately to log in. I can see her popping in and out, but she just texted and said that she can't even hear us right now. There's something weird going on with her Wi-Fi. I don't know anybody that uses Vella. Like I investigated it a little bit. I was thinking about putting a book out there just to see what would happen. But I get the feeling that nobody's just even on that platform, at least not enough readers for it to be worthwhile. And if they're doing something like this, this is a very drastic move. This just feels like end game kind of stuff.
Yeah. I always felt like it was yet another Amazon gated community. And I don't do that as a rule, but and Ream it does offers this same sort of thing for better. I'm just going to say, shout out to my buddy Michael. Well,
there's a few out there, right? I mean, people are still using Wattpad. There's a lot of services that are like this. I think they were just a little too late to that table, and it's sort of like Threads right now. Like it's out there, it's a great platform, but nobody's really using it because there's other platforms that got there first, and you need to be the first one out there, I guess, with all these different things.
Next up in the news, Spotify launches $9.99 audiobook subscription tier. Spotify has introduced a new audiobook subscription tier named Audiobooks Access Tier, aimed at providing a more affordable option for audiobook streaming on the platform. This new tier is priced at $9.99, $1 less than the Spotify Premium subscription, and offers 15 hours of audiobook listening but does not include ad-free music streaming. To subscribe to this new tier, users must sign up outside of the app, similar to purchasing individual audiobooks, to avoid Apple's fees. The introduction of Spotify's audiobook service in regions like the US, UK, and Australia marked a significant expansion, but came with high startup costs, contributing to an $81 million operating loss in Q4 of 2023. Despite these losses, Spotify observed a 10 million increase in premium subscribers during the same quarter. And since integrating audiobooks into premium, there's been a 45% increase in free users engaging with audiobook content daily.
Are either of you using Spotify for audiobooks?
I haven't used it for audiobooks yet.
Yeah, I use Spotify just for music. I haven't used it for audiobooks yet, but I have poked around and sort of like checked out what's on there. And but I think even with the music, it still limits you at 15 hours a month, I believe.
Well, that was the other one. If I'm understanding this correctly, they've got one platform or one tier that you can buy. There's that word again, that has music and has audiobooks. And then for $1 less, you get just audiobooks. But 15 hours either way is your grand total.
Right. Yeah. Which I don't know. I mean,
I'm not sure why you would do this. Like, why pay the? I mean, save $1, sure, but
I'm sure somebody on, there was a conference call or a meeting and somebody had this up on a whiteboard and this was brainstormed and many hours went into coming up with this particular idea. But yeah, I don't see the appeal of it. For an extra $1, you get music. I'm still, I use Audible still for my audiobooks. I've got no reason to really branch out from there. Again, first to the table. Yeah. Audible was there first. They're on the bulk of our devices. We're all used to it. It's a credit-based system, which is different than, an hourly-based system.
Yeah, you can listen to the whole book instead of like just a certain amount of hours. And considering most like fiction audiobooks are more than 15 hours, that's
like you
can't even listen to the whole book in a month. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I know a lot of people on Audible, they'll buy a long audiobook, like, oh, this one's 25, this is 30 hours. Like I'm going to use my credit for that. That makes sense. But like, I don't want to look at Spotify audiobooks and say, okay, which ones are below 15 hours, because that's essentially the decision you've got to make.
Right.
Because you don't want to get a 16-hour book and have to wait, 3 weeks to find out what that ending is all about. I imagine there's
could you
probably,
imagine?
there's probably some kind of upsell, like you've reached the end of your tier, like, press this button to
pay another $9.
Yeah, buy another whatever.
Yeah.
And I mean, maybe that's going on, but I don't know. I don't want any part of it. Frankly, if it takes off, Audible could like easily tweak it. They could put out something to match it, and then they're not going to lose anybody to this. So I'm not quite sure what Spotify's trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's a strange cutoff.
Well, it's early days. We'll see how it goes. I don't want to be too critical of those guys because I'm hoping that they can knock Audible off of its perch. Anything that gives Amazon a black eye. But speaking of Audible, regarding Audible, Brandon Sanderson announced significant news regarding audiobook royalties, especially for independent authors, after expressing concerns last year about transparency and fairness in the industry. After negotiations, Audible has presented a new royalty structure for independent writers and smaller publishers, promising improved minimum royalty rates, monthly payments, and a more transparent system for authors. This new structure, while not meeting all of Sanderson's aspirations, marks a step towards better compensation and predictability for authors on how royalties are calculated and paid. Sanderson has decided to release his 4 secret projects on Audible as a result, signaling his belief in Audible's move as a positive development for the industry, also signaling that there was probably some money exchanging hands in that relationship.
It's nice. No. It's nice to see they got a new spokesperson. That's kind of what it feels like.
A hell of one too, man.
Yeah, I haven't seen the new terms, so I don't know whether they are good for us or bad for us. I'm what they consider a hybrid author. I've got the bulk of my audiobooks are with recorded books, so I'm totally hands off with those. I've got a couple that are indie published, where I'm doing the ACX thing. yeah, I'm going to try and drill down into this a little bit and see if I can get the terms and see what's actually changed. Honestly, like yesterday, I had an audiobook that I downloaded that I just could not get through. Like I listened to the first hour of it, and it was just horrible. So I went in just out of curiosity to see whether I could return that audiobook, because if you remember, like a year ago, that was this huge thing that blew up. Like people were buying books and able to easily return them, and Audible had promised to fix that. So I logged into my account. I clicked on the little link, where you go to return books, and literally every book that I have purchased in forever was on there with a little return this book link next to it.
Really?
It actually got easier to return a book than it was the last time I looked at this, instead of the other way around. And the books that, I went through when I saw that, and the books that were on my list were books that I either hadn't started, which makes sense. You should be able to return something you hadn't started, but also books that I finished months and months ago. Some I finished more than a year ago, still had a return option on them. So like that kind of stuff.
I wonder if it would deny it if you try. Did you try to return this other audiobook?
I returned the one that I went in there for. I didn't try to return any of the old ones. That's a good question. Like I wonder if it would somehow nix it. But like the fact that the button is there just kind of gives me pause. Because that really hit a lot of authors in the pocketbook. When that all blew up. And if they haven't fixed it, then
I question, why wouldn't you put a time limit on when someone could return a book? I shouldn't be able to return an audiobook that I bought, even if I didn't listen to it. I shouldn't be able to return it a year or 2 years later.
No, there should be
30 days is pretty.
There should be multiple time limits.
You can't return merchandise.
No, it should be based on when you bought it. There should be a time limit. Maybe how much of the book you listened to. You get past a certain percentage, it's not returnable anymore. I mean, all these things were thrown out there when this all popped up, but clearly they changed nothing. They made it easier. So
maybe it's because of the credit system. I mean, if I got a book on that credit, well, no, they pay the authors pretty soon after that. So yeah, that's what I want to avoid, is a year from now, someone returns one of my books and that's money out of my pocket, rather than, just within 30 days, there could have been a buffer to protect everybody.
Yeah. And Brandon Sanderson was kicking and screaming about this the same time the rest of us were. So I'm curious if he knows something about this that we don't, or if it's, if they have agreed to fix it, it just hasn't been rolled out yet. But we will see.
All right. Final story. 3 publishing veterans form a new house, Authors Equity. Madeline McIntosh, Don Weisberg, and Nina von Moltke, we'll say, veterans from Penguin Random House and Macmillan, have established Authors Equity, a new publishing company focusing on a non-traditional model that offers authors higher profit shares instead of advances. The company is supported by investments from notable authors James Clear, Louise Penny, and Tim Ferriss, indicating a significant interest from established writers in exploring innovative publishing models. Authors Equity aims to address industry challenges by emphasizing long-term collaboration, flexibility, transparency, and a commitment to supporting authors' development and audience engagement, contrasting with the practices of larger publishers. The core team includes former major publisher executives and specialists with Simon & Schuster, handling distribution and production for some of Author Equity's titles, indicating strategic partnerships and operational plans for launching fiction and nonfiction books. Authors Equity is expected to announce its first titles soon. I think this is a good thing. Advances have been crap for a long time now, and if I'm going to get I'd rather just waive the advance and earn more on the book. This is what makes sense to me.
Yeah, it is an interesting idea.
It sounds like they signed a very similar deal to the one that I have with Simon & Schuster, with my own imprint. They're publishing other people. And basically Simon & Schuster is the print and distribution arm, but that means that they're taking on the marketing and everything else related to that title. So it's basically a small press that has Simon & Schuster distribution and print. And that is a very big thing. I mean, I don't want to start going into numbers, but the cost to print a book through Simon & Schuster is significantly less than it is through print on demand or any of the other services typically available to indie authors. It basically turns print into a major profit center, whereas before, as an indie author, print is kind of an afterthought. You don't make enough on it to really care, but you put it out there because certain audience members want it, so you want to make sure they're able to get that product. But the real dollars for an indie author have always been in the ebooks and audiobooks. This opens that door for print. And I think you're going to see more of this. I think this is, we had talked about Simon and Schuster. They are definitely leading the charge and changing, this area of the publishing world. They're coming up with new and inventive ways to streamline the model and roll out things that have worked for them in the past to new people. And I think that combination of thought, those thought leaders, coming in from both sides and approaching this, it's going to really create some new avenues for authors in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think anything that just changes, industries have to have new things to stay fresh and alive. So I'm excited to see what happens.
Absolutely.
This episode is brought to you by AutoCrit. One of the most value-packed memberships for any author, AutoCrit brings you an amazing suite of tools that make it a breeze to plan, write, and edit your books all in one place. AutoCrit takes you far above standard grammar checking or cookie cutter guidance. Instead, it's like having an experienced editor in your genre watching over your shoulder to help you deliver great writing that keeps your audience trapped in the story. You can even compare your writing style to more than 100 best-selling authors right down to the word level, so you can see what the best in the business do to keep their storytelling clean, clear, and crisp. Listeners of the Writers Inc. podcast can now take advantage of lifetime membership for one single fee. That's right, no renewal fees.
Hi, this is JD Barker. I've used AutoCrit for years, and not only has it improved my writing, but it's been a crucial tool with aspiring authors that I've mentored. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just beginning, it'll help you find your weak spots and weed them out. Give it a shot with your latest project. Trust me, your editor will thank you.
Head to autocrit.com/JD to get your lifetime membership. Big thanks to AutoCrit for sponsoring the show.
All right, JD, who do we have up this week?
This week, we've got Audrey Wilson on. Audrey is an Emmy-nominated award-winning screenwriter and the author of the best-selling Wrong Girl Gone. Her latest book is called Only Human. She's basically going to tell us about that process and even going into query letters and adapting your novel for a film. A lot of different things. This is going to be fun. Audrey Wilson.
Well, I'm glad to be sitting here digitally across from Audrey Wilson. Thanks for joining us on the show, Audrey.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Now, first up, we got to get to this right away because I want to make sure we discuss what you got coming up for us, but for everybody watching and listening, it's already released. That's your second novel titled Only Human. What can you tell us a little bit about the novel?
Absolutely. Yeah. So Only Human is my second book, as you mentioned. It's a little different from my first book. My first book was Wrong Girl Gone, and it's more of a thriller suspense. And Only Human still has kind of that mystery element to it, but it's more of a love story. So it is the story of a woman named Elise who has no recollection of her life before her 19th birthday. So she has no memory, and she's really trying to kind of piece together her past. And one day she meets this other woman named Frankie, and something just kind of clicks. Like something inside of her just feels very compelled to connect with Frankie and essentially just kind of tell her anything to get her attention and to get her to fall in love with her. And so it kind of starts their relationship off on the wrong foot. And, as Lisa's past kind of starts to come back and unravel, their relationship will really be tested.
So okay, yeah, that's the whole no memory of your life before 19 years old is an interesting twist. I can relate. I can't remember anything before 19. I have no idea if I even existed before 19 years old.
I'm starting to feel more and more that way the older I get.
Right. What was the kind of inspiration for that twist?
Yeah, that's a good question. I remember the inspiration for that twist specifically, but I remember the inspiration kind of for the book in general. I was listening to a song by The Killers called Human, and something about just kind of the lyrics and the melody just started inspiring me. And it's interesting because in the book, that's one of the bands that the two characters really bond over. And so you'll kind of see little nuggets of, their songs. I even created a playlist that people can listen to that kind of has a lot of the music from the book in it. But that was kind of my initial inspiration. And I think the idea of just not being able to remember your past is kind of an interesting take because it allows for the opportunity to have second chances, and kind of allows for this main character, Lise, to kind of refigure out who she is, and then also be able to, learn who she is and learn who she is in relation to Frankie as well. So it's just kind of an interesting take on a different type of love story.
Yeah. So you said you used like lyrics and things in the book, and I've always heard that there's a lot of rules, a lot of restrictions around that kind of thing. Did you have to deal with any of that in the whole process?
Yeah, so originally I did have some lyrics in the book, and because I didn't quite realize that you weren't allowed to use lyrics, because they're copyrighted. I didn't know you weren't allowed to use those at all, even if you're crediting the song. And my publisher let me know we're gonna have to, change this a little bit. So we ended up actually cutting any use of the lyrics, and just referencing the songs themselves. And it was kind of an interesting process, actually, because at first I was like, oh, shoot, there's parts of the lyrics that really, point to the scene in the story. And so I kind of had to rework a few things, just making, descriptions of the music rather than using the actual lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the kind of thing I hear about a lot. And that's a challenge because sometimes that lyric was the inspiration for this scene or even for the entire book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I hope, having a playlist will kind of help people, get the idea.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So that book officially released in terms of this podcast on February 1st. So people can find that. How would they find that? We'll get to that right now so that we'll come back to it. But
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's available on Amazon. Then it's also available in various bookstores, Barbara's Bookstore, Barnes and Noble. Or you can also look at my website, and I'll have links up there as well. That's audreywilsonauthor.com.
excellent. All right. All right. We'll come back around to mention the book again later because I want to make sure people do go and pick that up. But there's so many things that because one of the things you did that I like when a guest comes on a podcast is you like, here are some things I could talk about. And among those were things that I know our listeners are going to be interested in. That whole process of how you came to be a published author in the first place is an important piece. And then you specifically mentioned query letters, and that's something I don't think we talk about enough is the query letter. So let's first talk about your journey. Like, how did you even come to be published in the first place?
Yeah, so with my first book, Wrong Girl Gone, it was a long writing process because I actually started writing that way back when I was in high school. So of course, as I got older, my writing improved, I like to think. And so it involved a lot of, writing and rewriting. And then ultimately, when I found that I was, fully edited and ready to kind of seek publication, I started having to do a lot of research and trying to figure out, what the best publishing route would be. Is it better for me to self-publish or go through a traditional publisher or an agent? So I really started doing a lot of research on the different types of publishing. And eventually, I ended up going with a traditional publisher. And kind of the whole process of that, when you're seeking publication, a big part of it is writing the query letter. And that in itself was a really big learning process for me. A query letter, for those of you who don't know, is essentially kind of like a cover letter might be for a job interview where you're essentially pitching your book and you're pitching yourself and any other publications that you might have to try to get, this agent or the publisher interested in your work. And so how I look at it is there's a couple different components to a query letter. One of the main things, of course, is kind of being able to sell your book. And that's could be done through maybe a log line or like a one sentence pitch of your book. You'll also want to make sure that you have your target audience. So, who your book is geared towards. You probably want to include your word count and your genres. And then a lot of times they'll also ask for things like comp titles. So, books that your book is similar to. So kind of, I started figuring out how to essentially sell my book and, what would make it really appeal to publishers and agents. And I, went through multiple drafts of, query letter until I kind of came to one that, really fit that I was proud of. And that's kind of where I started just, reaching out and researching agents and publishers and trying to find my book a good home.
Yeah. And that's the trick. Yeah. And you mentioned in your bio actually that, the whole idea of consider like, how do you decide if you're going to go the traditional route or go the self-publishing route? I did a little of both, but I mostly went self-publishing. But what was it that sort of steered you towards more traditional? Would you consider self-publishing? Is that still something you would think
Yeah,
about doing?
I definitely would consider self-publishing. When I initially started out, a big thing was money.
Yeah.
And just not feeling that I had the resources to self-publish the book the way I wanted it to be done and of the same like standard that I wanted it to be published. And I think that self-publishing is a really, really great option. I think that, you know, people might get the wrong idea these days that, oh, self-publishing just means you put your book up on Amazon. And,
Right.
it's obviously like there's so much more to it than that. It's a lot of coordination on the author's part. Having to possibly hire a graphic designer to design your cover, editors of various sorts, marketers, like, there's, as you probably know, there's a lot of layers to it.
Right.
And when I first started on my publishing journey, I didn't feel I was ready to quite take that on yet. Like I didn't
Yeah.
feel I knew enough.
Yeah.
But I feel like, at this point in my career, that would be something that I might be more likely to consider.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. And I've talked to other people in the trad world who feel the same way. It's like now that they're on one side of the fence or the other. They're either on the side of the fence where they say, "Oh, I can't do all that marketing and other stuff," and so they're never going to even try it. And then there's the group that's like, now that I know what the pieces look like, now that I know what the puzzle's supposed to look like, I could take that on, and say,
Right.
earn out a little or whatever. So
Exactly.
yeah.
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 Especially because working with traditional publishers, the ones I've worked with have been smaller publishers.
Hmm.
And so, they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to like market your book the same way that a really big publisher might be able to. So, already as a traditionally published author with independent publishers, smaller publishers, I'm still doing, a lot of marketing on my own. So it's something that I'm learning kind of along the way too.
Right. What is some of the marketing that you're having to do, even with this? By the way, this is correcting kind of that misnomer that, well, if I get a traditional contract, at least I don't have to worry about the marketing. But you're saying, and I know this to be true, there's still some marketing there. You're going to have to do some of it.
Absolutely.
So what are you doing?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like, it's true that like kind of an author is only as good as their ability to market their book,
Yeah.
and it's something that I think we take for granted. And, as authors, at least for me, like I don't want to be marketing, like I want to be writing, of course, but
Mhm.
it's definitely an important piece of the puzzle. So, different ways that I go about it are, interviews, things like that, podcasts and whatnot. And then also social media is a big one. I really try to focus on primarily on Instagram, but a little bit on TikTok. But I think one of the important things is to kind of, instead of trying to spread yourself too thin over too many different platforms, which can be very exhausting. There's kind of so many different outlets these days, is really try to focus your efforts a little bit in a little bit more of a like guided way.
Yeah.
I find that to be helpful at all. Some people might be able to kind of stretch themselves across the board and do a great job with it. But those are a couple different ways. And then also I have a newsletter. So people can sign up for that just at my website. And that's a nice way I kind of keep in touch with people, month after month, sending them links to different interviews I've done, or, any upcoming releases and things like that.
Yeah. So, let's take a look at your process, because that's something that fascinates me. There's two things that fascinate me about every author. It's the process they use to produce a book and their office space. And since I can't really see your office space, let's talk about, what your actual writing process looks like. Do you write every day?
That's a great question. I would like to say that I write every day. I don't. In an ideal world, I would be, but I do feel like I'm doing something that is writing focused
Yeah.
almost every single day. So even if it's not sitting down and actually writing, it's some form of promotion or editing or anything like that. So I would say that it's definitely a big part of my daily life. In terms of the setting that I usually work in, I'm in my office right now, and I do sometimes write in this office, but I also work a 9 to 5 job remotely, and this is more of my space for focusing on that. And I have a hard
Right.
time, I guess, blending, the creativity with the place that I'm doing my 9 to 5 work.
Right.
So a lot of times I actually just like to write in our living room. I get comfy on the couch and I get my laptop, and it's kind of my happy place,
Yeah.
I guess you'd say.
Okay. So you
Um,
write with a laptop. We've got that.
yes.
Do you use anything? Is it Microsoft Word? Is it Scrivener? It's, what's your tool of choice?
Yes and yes. I primarily only use Microsoft Word and then like Google Docs.
Yeah.
But I actually just started using Scrivener a few months ago, and I'm using it to write my next book, and it's been really helpful. I'm a huge I don't know what you'd call it, a huge fan of outlining, and I have
Yeah.
to outline everything that I do. And Scrivener has been really helpful in that it helps me just kind of break down the book by act, by chapter,
Yeah.
just really break it down in a way that I can kind of formulate formalize it in my head
Yeah.
and make it kind of come to life. So that's definitely something that I do.
Yeah, I remember early days, like I talking about like your office space and getting out of it because that's where your day job is. Like,
Right.
I was a copywriter for a lot of my career, and so Microsoft Word was that space I was always in. And so I literally started the reason I actually picked up Scrivener in the first place was because of the cork board and the all the cards, the index
Yeah.
cards, but then I never used that. I probably use like 1% of Scrivener to be honest, but I like the nonlinear editing or nonlinear writing portion of the
Sure.
application. So
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
you've got two novels. You got any other work out there besides the two novels, or are you just working on some
Those
stuff?
two are the main ones in terms of the fiction realm, but I'm also a screenwriter. So
Yeah,
I've written about a dozen or so screenplays or television pilots, things like that. And I have managers in Los Angeles with Aligned Talent Group who are constantly at bat for me pitching my work. So I have gotten some work as well through them.
that's an interesting sort of pivot from just which came first, was it the screenplays or the novels?
Oh, that's a good question. I I don't know if I could tell you. I feel like since I was probably around 11 or 12, I loved making movies. Like my friend and I would get, our home camcorder and we'd,
Yeah,
write out little scripts and
yeah.
very, very non-professional work, of course. But on the side, I also enjoyed working on, fiction. So I would say I kind of developed my love for both of them simultaneously and in different ways.
Which one do you sort of lean toward? Like if you got up in the morning and you had to just start and you didn't weren't pre-thinking it and you didn't have a project on the board already, what would be the go-to for you?
Ooh, I would probably say, gosh, it kind of depends on my mood, but maybe fiction writing if I really need to kind of get out of my own head.
Hmm.
Like it's so different than screenwriting because with screenwriting, I was talking about outlining earlier, and it's very much about the structure and the outline, and like every scene, every word just really counts. You're a lot
Yeah.
more limited. Whereas with writing fiction, I feel like I can kind of sink into the character. I can sometimes just write kind of for a while, and I know it's not very good, and I know I can go back and cut it, but it helps me like get into the world that I'm trying to create.
Yeah.
So I would say that fiction allows me to do that more in a way than screenwriting.
That's interesting. Yeah, screenwriting is something like I've done it in my past. I worked
Yeah,
in film and TV for a while, and it's
nice.
a whole different mindset than writing a novel for sure. Because I can go as big as I want in the novel.
Right.
The cost is just the time it takes to write the epic scene of a horde of undead whatever the big multi-million dollar budget would require for a screenplay. uh is that part of it for you? Like, do you find there's less limitation? Like, how let me ask this: how far are you willing to go in a screenplay? Like, are you willing to write the epic blockbuster in a screenplay?
Yeah, so it's funny because I've had the same thought, where it's like when you're writing a screenplay, the screenplay isn't the finished product,
Yeah.
like when you're writing a book, it feels a lot more like the finished product. Like, sure, you're not maybe published yet, but it's essentially what it's going to be. And with a screenplay, like you said, you have to kind of think about budget, you have to think about marketability and who would want to buy this, who would want to watch it, who would want to invest a lot of money into it. And I feel like when I'm writing a screenplay, a lot of the ones that I tend to do don't tend to be like epic fantasy blockbuster like action as much. So I feel like while I'm thinking about those things, a lot of the stories that I already want to tell are a little bit more like character driven pieces, are a little bit more maybe simplistic in terms of the ask that I
Mhm.
would need from a studio. So I don't really think about that as much, but it's interesting hearing from you, if that's kind of more, where your mind is and what you're writing, that's
Yeah.
something that would come into play.
Yeah. I tend to think of big scenes, but whenever I've done any screenwriting, it's, I have to be conscious of, okay, who's going to make this movie?
Right.
If I, do I have a deal with Spielberg yet? If I've got that deal, then I'll go ahead and put in this
Oh
alien
yeah, if you've
stuff.
got Spielberg on board, just like go for it.
Just let it fly.
Yeah.
Uh, you talk. Let's talk a little bit about though, because one of the things you offered to talk about generously is the idea of moving your book, translating it into screenplay. That's something I'm always sort of curious about because I've attempted this with my novels, and it's not easy because it's like, talk about kill your darlings. Like I suddenly got to decide which of the scenes is actually important to the story and which isn't. So what are your
Yeah.
tips on doing this?
That's a great question. I'm doing a presentation on this at a Chicago Writers Conference, and it's really interesting even to put together this presentation because I'm thinking of things in a whole different way. I've always written fiction, I've always written screenplays, but now I'm really melding the two. And so it's a great question. It's really interesting to think about. And one of the things I'm currently doing actually is adapting Wrong Girl Gone, my first book, into a screenplay. And it's something I've been wanting to do for a while, but it's also a really good exercise
Yeah.
in making me think about this from a more of a technical, like outsider standpoint. And it is hard. Like, you'd think in a way like, oh, it would just come naturally if it's something especially that I myself wrote. But one, I wrote this book, like I said, starting a long time ago. And so there's things that I want to do differently. And like you said, it's kind of a matter sometimes of killing your darlings. Like,
Yeah.
okay, say there's 10 characters in this book, but I know I'm limited on screen time. I'm probably gonna have to cut that down to 5 or 6 centralized characters.
Right.
And then also what's interesting is trying to think about visual ways to tell your story. With fiction, you have an inner monologue, you have a lot of description, and with a screenplay, all you have is whatever is in the shot on a screen.
Hmm.
And so you really have to think about things in terms of if I want to show what this character is thinking or feeling, I can't just write, oh, she thought this. I have to think about a visual way to show that through action and choices that the characters are making.
Yeah, that's the sort of like, I don't know. I had a word in my head that just flew right out, but like subtext, I guess, is kind of what I'm aiming for. Like, how do you,
Yeah.
what do you do to pull that in? Because a lot of my stuff, I now know after years of writing that a lot of it kind of takes place, in someone's head.
Right.
A lot of this, what we're seeing, the filter that we're seeing, the whole thing. What? I guess what's your advice there? Like, how do you how do you translate that kind of thing to something on
Yeah,
screen?
it's a great question. I would say how I try to look at it, I try to look at the scene as if I'm a person who has no idea what is about to happen. Like
Hmm.
I haven't written this book and like I don't know the characters and what they're thinking. And try to look at it from an audience member's perspective. Like for example, with Wrong Girl Gone, in the very beginning, it kind of starts out with the main character, Joy, taking this money that she finds her husband is keeping from her and going on the run. And instead of kind of showing this whole scene that I had in the book where she's like finding the money and it's all kind of played out over a period of several pages, I decided to open it with her in her car driving, and in her purse next to her, we see an envelope of money. And right away, as an audience member, we're seeing that visual, and we're knowing, okay, she has a lot of money. Where did it come from? We're asking all these different questions.
Yeah, I think that's you're kind of hitting on something I think is important that a lot of people, I think every writer, screenplay, novel, whatever, needs to know how to trust their audience. Because I think we have a tendency to sort of over-explain, like, or we throw things in there because we think, oh, the audience is never going to get this otherwise, and then it just sort of muddies those waters and makes it even more difficult to understand.
Absolutely. That's a really great point. And, I've been guilty of doing that too. And you have to trust your audience. Like, I mean,
Right.
I had my my screenwriting manager come back to me about a script I wrote a while back. And she said, like, oh, it's great, but this one scene, it's too on the nose, like, let the audience figure it out. So I reworked the scene with that in mind. And sure enough, I feel like it flows a lot better. You have to trust that your audience will figure it out.
So having all this inside knowledge on screenplays, do you write novels with the intention of them eventually being adapted?
Um, in a way I do, but it's almost like when I get an idea, I know pretty early on in my head if I want it to be a book or a screenplay. And, it's sometimes it's both, like I was saying with my first book, but other times I'm like, I don't know if I could see this quite as a film, at least not in the same way that I see it as a book.
Yeah.
And, so it's kind of interesting to
We
look at them
just
from different
we just need
perspectives.
to make a movie of someone reading the book out loud. That's it. Just
I think
somebody
that could work.
Kevin Smith style, standing on, leaning against a wall, reading a book.
Yes. I mean, talk about low budget, you'd save a lot of money.
Yeah, and you'd very low budget because I don't think that film would ever make it to a theater. So
Probably not.
okay, so with all that in mind, looping back to Only Human, I mean, do you have designs and plans for this to eventually be on screen?
I eventually, yes, I would love to try to adapt it into a film, but at the same time, it's still so new to me in a way as a book that it's kind of hard. Like, I feel like I have to take a step back from looking at it, especially having gone through, these last few months of the editing process and just really being in it. I feel like I kind of need to take some time to step back and see really how it would translate into a film.
Yeah. What do you think the biggest limitation would be for this book specifically? What do you think the
For
challenge would be?
this one, I would say part of it is the inner monologue. I think with this book, there's a lot of really beautiful nuggets because it's told from the perspective of both of the two main women that I mentioned. And there's so many lines that I love that are in their heads, and it's talking about how they're feeling about the other character, and it really makes their love story seem very authentic because you get to kind of see how each of them is feeling. But I think I would struggle a little bit with trying to translate that love story onto the big screen. Like, I'm up for the challenge, don't get me wrong, but I just would want to make sure I wasn't losing any of those little nuances.
Well, I believe in you, and I think if anybody's going to pull it off, you will. But to start, before we ever get to screen, we want to see millions of people go and buy this book. It's called Only Human, and it is your second novel. And they can find it. Give us the website one more time where they can track you down.
Sure. It's audreywilsonauthor.com. And I'm also on Instagram as dreamerbyday91. And then I have a Facebook page as well, Audrey Wilson Author. So feel free to follow me, sign up for my newsletter, and I'll be happy to send updates on everything else I'm working on.
Outstanding. All right. You heard her, everybody. Rush out, buy the book, and follow her on Instagram and everywhere else. So thank you, Audrey, for being a part of this show.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciate it.
So do any of us really have any memories from before 19 years old? I can't remember a thing, honestly.
That reminded
Some
me.
things.
There's a book called Memory Box, which is really good. It's an indie author. She wrote it. It's basically a woman who sits down and Googles herself one day, and the history of herself that comes up on Google is very different than what she actually remembers. Basically a
Oh,
whole
that's cool.
different past. This was an indie author, and that the book actually went to the New York Times list. It was just a really cool idea.
That is cool.
Yeah, I mean, most of my teenage years are a complete blur, and they're probably left, better left that way. So
Yeah. I had a head injury in my 20s that caused amnesia.
oh
And,
wow.
Oh, wow.
So I have memories of prior to that now that I didn't have immediately after that, but it's still kind of fuzzy. And I got a good friend of mine named David who can just remember like every specific detail about every moment of our lives. And he is constantly surprising me with things that I said or did. So I don't even know if I can believe him, honestly.
Now, when he brings it up, does it spark that memory? Does it come back to you, or is it just gone?
Sometimes I get it's a little bit like if someone reminds you of a dream you had, it's a little bit like that. It's fuzzy, but I can kind of remember. Oh yeah, that did happen. I do remember something like that happened. I just don't have. It's almost like not being first person in your own memory.
Huh.
That's what it's turned out like. So
I get that.
weird facts.
I can remember my teen years, but like before then is probably the same way. Like if I see a picture or someone says something like, I'm like, oh, maybe I remember that.
Yeah. A lot of it's come back though. So we talked about a little bit about music using lyrics in your books, which I know is a no-no, which is a frustrating one, by the way, because I can quote poetry, I can quote anything, but I can't quote lyrics. That's annoying. But have you guys ever managed to use lyrics legally or otherwise in your books?
I throw it into a lot of them, only to have the publisher or the lawyers at the publisher come back at me later and say this needs to come out or this needs to be adjusted. I think we've talked about this on the air before, but in one of my books, The Fifth to Die, I used the lyrics for Frosty the Snowman. And that was actually the biggest hurdle I've ever had to deal with from a lyric standpoint, because for the most part, the publishers will allow you to use a certain percentage of a song, and you so you can get away with like one line or two lines, things like that. But because Frosty the Snowman is so repetitive, one or two lines is a big percentage of that particular song. So it was very difficult.
Yeah.
They tried to get the rights to it. It got to be too expensive, and we had to kind of chop it up and kind of do what she had mentioned. You just sort of hint at it, because everybody knows it, so you can just throw one or two keywords out there and get everybody to remember it. But I've had other ones. I Six Wicked Child, I used a Harry Styles line in there, a Pink Floyd line in there. We had no trouble getting permission for those, but it was like one sentence each. But if you're with a traditional publisher, the bottom line is the lawyers will make you, there's a form you've got to fill out, you've got to disclose it. Then they come back at you and they will tell you whether or not they think you can get it. If there's money involved in getting it, that's going to ultimately come out of your pocket, out of your advance, out of your royalties, that kind of thing. The publisher's not going to pay for it for you. And if it's a gray area in any way where they think they could get in trouble, they will make you just take it out.
I'm fighting for one right now where a character says that milkshake brought all the boys to the yard. And it's a change to the lyric, actually, but it's a phrase that gets used. It's like a street level phrase. So that's the argument I'm making, is that the song can't own copyright to it because it's a common phrase. So we'll see.
Yeah, that is an interesting thing. Like, you'd think that some things, like once they become part of like the popular culture consciousness, that it sort of gets a little. I'm actually surprised that songs don't have, where they don't enter into public domain. I'm shocked that you can't use Frosty the Snowman. That seems.
Well, they do enter public domain at a certain point. I forget what the rules are there. That one's just not in there yet. The milkshake song you're mentioning, Greg Hurwitz, we just had him on. He actually references it in his latest book, because one of the characters changes a ringtone on somebody else's phone to that particular song. And he was able to reference it in the book. So like, if we ever get him back on, we have to ask him how he was able to do that.
Okay. You know what? I may just call him up and ask him.
Do that.
Because if he's got an answer, that's going to shortcut things. So we talked about query letters, and this isn't something I've had to do a lot in my life. I've done quite a few by now, but it hasn't been an everyday practice in my life. But do you have either of you have like a format or structure or a preferred method of doing a query letter?
I just had to write one. I am still in the process of having to write query letters to sell my wares to potential agents. So I I don't know. I think I've tried everything. I did. My critique partner recommended writing the query letter before I started the manuscript, which I did this time, and I actually think it was very helpful to do. But I tried it. So I have a couple tricks to see if I hit the tone right. In movie trailers, there's that guy, the voice, Kevin Tumlinson was just a writer, that voice. Yeah. So I tried to see if I can read my query in that voice, because it feels like if that's kind of exciting, that might be the tone I want to hit. And then, I just try to picture if it would be on the jacket copy, what that would read like to entice a reader. And those are kind of the two ways I try to read my query letter. I don't know if that's helpful to anyone else.
I've talked about this a bunch of times on the air. The first time I queried, I used a form letter. That's a horrible thing to do. Don't ever do that. Since then, I've had multiple agents. And I work with a lot of authors to help them fine tune their query letters, because one of the biggest problems that happens is when an author is ready to write a query letter, they hop on Google and they say, they type in best query letter or, good query letter, like that kind of thing. And one particular, format always shows up over and over again, and they follow that to create their query letter. Now, the problem with that is if you're an agent, you open up your inbox on a Monday morning, you've got 200 queries in there. If they all follow that same format, before you know it, you're hitting delete without even reading them anymore. So, one of the best examples I've got of just change it up, come up with something very different outside of the box. I've got a friend who, when he was querying, he sent me his letter, and it very much fit that particular formula. It was a good book, a great query, he had all the right information in there, but because of the way it was laid out, it didn't stick out. And he works security in New York. He's basically, when diplomats are coming into the country, when they're in New York, he's one of the guys that has to protect them when they're in town. So I had him add for the very first line of his query letter, "I carry a gun in New York." And, that's the first sentence in that letter. It's like, when an agent is opening their email, they see that, it at least grabs their attention long enough where they go, oh, and have to figure out what the rest of it is about. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to, fall head over heels for the book, but at least you've got their attention for those couple of seconds. And I think that's what the goal needs to be. How do you stand out? There's 200 letters there. How is yours going to be different?
I think that's what the movie trailer voice does, because if you think about how, at least for me, when you watch movie trailers, it's always sort of like you just said, I carry a gun in New York City. It's very, it starts with some kind of let's snag your attention, and then you can kind of go more into the story. But it definitely has I spent a lot of time watching movie trailers to see if this was a good strategy before I did it. And they do all kind of start with, if not necessarily a log line or an elevator pitch, definitely something catchy that's going to get you to, not hit next on, or, skip forward. So that's kind of what I go for, is kind of punchy, something that introduces, the characters and hints at what they're going to have to go through.
Well, considering how easy a lot of this stuff is becoming, generating video and things like that, I wonder if the query letter is going to evolve or possibly go away and get replaced with something else, like the query video or the query trailer or the query something, something other than an email landing in an agent's inbox.
Sort of I could see things evolving to a sort of Kickstarter type pitch. Like, if you're going to query anyone, you have to have this page that has all these elements on it, like videos and descriptions and whatever, to entice them to actually.
Some editors have that. I know my another friend of mine went on submission last year, and her agent had her put together a hidden page on her website that only editors could see and go to with the direct link, and it had a bunch of things, like a playlist, and I think a vision board, and a bunch of different elements to sort of entice the editor into requesting the manuscript. So, I mean, I guess you're not that far off.
No, that's actually very common. I've got one of those right now for Behind a Closed Door that's got, any ads that have been created all go in there. Any blurbs are all there. Basically anything tied to the book is one giant Dropbox folder that we give access to for anybody that's actually working the title. So
Maybe I'll try it when I'm ready to query this next manuscript. Put like, if you'd like to learn more, click here.
Yeah.
See if it
You're
works.
giving me great ideas. I'm gonna build a whole thing. All right. Well, but speaking of movies, do you guys have the movie of your book in mind while you're writing? Do you think about it in terms of that?
I'm very visual, so yeah, I can't write a scene if I can't visualize it. I have to be able to see, if not like the whole thing, at least like the broad shot of it, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
That's what it's like for me when I'm writing. It's whenever all cylinders are firing, I'm basically watching that movie play out in my head, and I'm just trying to write down what I see as fast as I can. Yeah. So I think that the scenes tend to come out very visual when you do that.
Yeah, that's me. Although, and we talked about this a little in the interview, but a lot of my books are very internal monologue, so, but I'm still envisioning it. And I don't know, there's some like fuzzy area there, I think, but I'm like still seeing it in a cinematic view, but I'm writing most of the stories happening in this character's head. Their interpretation of what they're seeing or whatever. So
it's like the narration, when you're watching a movie. So it's sort of like there's the
closed captioning. I have closed captioning on.
Well, even if you have like I don't know the Hollywood term, but where you're watching the scene, but then the narrator is narrating.
Yeah. Well, JD, who do we got coming up next week?
Next week, we've got Maggie Thrash on. Maggie debuted in 2015 with her acclaimed young adult graphic novel, Honor Girl. It's about a girl losing innocence and finding love at a sleepaway camp. She's set to launch her first adult title. It's called Rainbow Black and releases March 19th. So, Maggie Thrash.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it. And if you'd like to be notified as soon as new episodes publish, make sure you go to writersincpodcast.com and sign up now. We'll see you next episode, and have a great week of writing.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Writers Inc. Access the show notes and leave a comment at writersincpodcast.com.